Our second speaker this evening is Dr. Frank Costello. Dr. Costello has long combined writing books as a working historian with involvement in business development on both sides of the Atlantic. His private sector work has included attracting US venture capital into Northern Ireland over the past 10 or 15 years, as well as trade development and business partnership with the United States and Europe. And prior to this, his responsibilities included service as head of economic development for the city of Boston. His books include biographies of Terence MacSweeney, Enduring the Most, and Michael Collins in his own words. And probably his main book on modern Ireland is his work published about 10 years ago and now having gone through its third printing, The Irish Revolution and its Aftermath, looking at the years which Professor Laffin has focused on this evening. He's currently working on a diplomatic history of the American Civil War. I think he works between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. I'd like you to welcome Dr. Frank Costello.
Thank you very much, Eamon, and I want to thank you, Eamon, for your stalwart efforts in helping facilitate this dialogue for the past few weeks on remembering the future, and particularly want to thank the Community Relations Council for its sponsorship and ongoing support in what is a great project for all of this island and all our communities therein. And to Deirdre McBride and her team with Ms. McNeil and the others for supporting and making this possible. Deirdre, I met, first of all, some years back, not too many, Deirdre, but at our programs at Harvard and the Kennedy School of Leadership, and I think you embody what we're trying to accomplish then and the quite effective leadership that you're demonstrating in this project. However, it's Deirdre that's given me 15 minutes tonight to talk about the Irish diaspora in the United States and the Irish Revolution, which is somewhat like giving me the same amount of time to outline in 15 minutes the transgressions of News Corp and the Murdochs. But we'll make the effort nonetheless. And I'll follow upon the brilliant and outstanding and inspiring presentation by Dr. Laffin and leave a good bit for Dr. Coleman and her own distinguished work on County Longford and women and so forth. But on a street corner in Manhattan in February 1919, Eamon de Valera, the erstwhile president of the Irish Republic, was turned over to the care of Harry Boland and Joe McGarrity, the wealthy head of Clan na Gael, the Irish Republican Brotherhood's principal support group in America. Just weeks earlier, de Valera had escaped with the personal assistance on the ground of Michael Collins and Boland from the British prison cell and was bundled off to New York from Liverpool aboard a vessel masquerading as a seaman, with Boland traveling ahead of him to New York. In all, de Valera would spend a considerable period of 19 months in absentia in the U.S. in 1919 and 1920, raising funds as well as generating propaganda to exert pressure on the British government, leading to the recognition of a sovereign Irish Republic. The impact de Valera's stay provoked in the U.S. from both a propaganda and financial standpoint caused consternation within the British government and its officials in the U.S. But at the outset, the tone of reports back to the Foreign Office by the British legation in Washington was dismissive. In June 1919, one officer told Lord Curzon, the Foreign Secretary, it was, quote, unlikely that de Valera would be able to exert any serious influence. But within months, the same officials sent a message home concerned about the impact the visit was exerting on the U.S. political process. De Valera's visit and the many months of barnstorming tours, including mass rallies, he had been addressing in sports stadiums across the country in Boston, New York, Cleveland, Chicago, San Francisco, and Joe McGarrity's home base in Philadelphia before tens of thousands, along with countless press interviews, resulting in British officials in the U.S. reporting then that the so-called president of the Irish Republic was clearly having an impact. One official wrote, quote, it is impossible to exaggerate the extent to which the Irish question and the Irish vote dominates the situation. Other groups, such as Germans and Indians, attached themselves to the Irish organizations for its support and general respectability. De Valera was not only one of the few surviving leaders of the Easter Rising, he was the one who best served as its link to the War of Independence. By January 1919, he was head of the Volunteers, president of Sinn Féin, and president of Dáil Éireann, a post he was elected to in absentia. He agreed with Collins' assessment that he could do more to advance Ireland's cause by rallying public opinion in America than he could on the run in Ireland. His stay in the U.S. was often fraught with controversy, with his activities sometimes placing him at odds with some Irish American organizations and their leaders. Early on, he made the mistake of taking sides between Irish American organizations, when his service as a unifying force would have proved far more productive to the interests of the cause he came to represent. But there had been fissures between Irish American support organizations before de Valera arrived in the U.S. The Irish Race Convention held in Philadelphia in February 1919, for example, to support the formation of Dáil Éireann, the previous month received little or no support from either Judge Daniel Costello or the old Fenian John Devoy, despite a major outreach effort conducted by Joe McGarity as leader of Clan na Gael. Indeed, throughout the War of Independence, philosophical differences between McGarity and Costello persisted. The former, an Irish native, was committed outright to the ideal of an independent Irish republic, while the latter, an anti-Wilsonian Democrat, opposed America's entry into the League of Nations and placed his emphasis on self-determination for Ireland, but not so much on what form of government the country should have. One organization able to straddle the differences between McGarity and Costello, and later between de Valera and Costello, was the American Committee for Relief in Ireland, founded by Dr. David Maloney. The group, as well as having pressure placed on the British government by President Warren Harding, was able by 1921 to provide $5 million in humanitarian assistance to Ireland. Maloney, by remaining outside the orbit of Irish-American organizations, was tied to no particular faction and was able to exert pressure on the British government of a political and propagandistic nature. And in his own tours across the American continent, during 1919 and 1920, de Valera reached millions of people in total and set in motion the means by which he was responsible for generating another $5 million for the Dáil loan that Collins helped initiate, and as Dr. Laffin has alluded to. In city after city, he was feted at city halls and state legislative chambers by mayors and governors alike. These proved to be invaluable public platforms. Again, baseball stadiums, armories, and auditoriums afforded him his best opportunity for connecting with larger audiences, as was the case in Boston on 27 June 1919, and in Chicago 2 weeks later, when 70,000 and 50,000 people respectively turned out for outdoor events in these two cities. But de Valera's visit was motivated by more than fundraising. His primary task was a secure recognition of the Irish Republic by the U.S. government. Conversely, the priority of President Woodrow Wilson was the approval of the League of Nations by the U.S. Senate. Furthermore, to make the New World Order he envisaged in what was now the aftermath of the First World War reality. Wilson needed Britain as a staunch ally. These reasons, beyond Wilson's own Ulster Presbyterian background, rendered either the U.S. special recognition of the Irish Republic or support for its case for nationhood before the League of Nations extremely unlikely. In the end, despite the best efforts of de Valera and thousands of Irish Americans in pro-recognition campaigns, the bid for U.S. recognition ended in failure. But that result assured that physical force, not political agitation, would become the engine driving the Irish independence effort. But the British government's own efforts to negate de Valera's visit and to characterize those active in support of the Irish cause in America as being less than loyal to the U.S. or its political supporters as self-centered vote seekers had only a limited success. This was demonstrated by the response generated by Maloney's own organization, the Friends of Irish Freedom, along with the respected American magazine, The Nation. The Friends of Irish Freedom served as the catalyst in 1920 for the attention focused on Britain's conduct in Ireland by the American Committee on Conditions in Ireland. Modeled somewhat ironically after the British investigation of alleged German atrocities in Belgium under Lord Bryce, the committee's membership included 9 U.S. senators, 5 governors, various members of the U.S. House of Representatives, labor leaders, and church members from an array of denominations. It is clear that Dr. Maloney strove to use the panel as a vehicle which would place British policy in Ireland in a negative light, though this was not the panel's outward mission. As F.M. Carroll has observed in regard to Maloney, an impartial account of British activities in Ireland might work to further inhibit British operations there until there was a change in the British government or until world opinion was moved into action. Britain's rejection of a formal request by the Commission to visit Ireland provoked a joint letter of protest to the U.S. Secretary of State by U.S. senators in the panel, including the prestigious Senator George Norris, Senator Robert La Follette, and David I. Walsh. They argued that British denial of their entry to Ireland represented, they said, a violation, and I quote, of the right of free communication between the liberty-loving peoples of two democracies. In the course of some 14 days of public hearings conducted by the Commission in the U.S. from November 19th of 1920 to January 21 of 21, conducted in Washington, New Orleans, throughout the country, testimony was heard from 37 witnesses, 18 of whom came from Ireland. Included among them were Muriel and Mary McSweeney, the wife and sister of Terence McSweeney, the late Lord Mayor of Cork, who died 3 weeks before after a 74-day hunger strike at England's Brixton prison. McSweeney's death had received worldwide attention, and nowhere, with the exception of Ireland, Britain itself, did it receive greater focus than in the U.S. Every effort was made by Irish-American organizations to hold him up as a martyr to British oppression. The appearance of the two McSweeney women before the Commission, both dressed in black, coupled with lengthy and moving testimony of McSweeney's sister, more than countered Britain's own propaganda efforts. In addition, from December 1920 through March 21, the Nation published transcripts of the testimony taken by the Commission in weekly installments. Its interim report by the Commission, issued in March 21, generated publicity that provoked considerable discomfort on the part of the British government, placing external pressure for change of the coalition's Irish policy. As an indictment of British policy in Ireland, the report's findings were a blow to the coalition's efforts to paint a different picture. It said in part, and I quote from the interim report by the Commission, it said, "We would extend our sympathy to the British people. The army, which is the instrument of their government in Ireland, would also seem to be the instrument of the moral heritage which was their glory. The sun of that glory seems finally to have set in Ireland. British justice has become a discredited thing. The official black and tans compete for this honor of Anglo-Saxon civilization with our own official lynch mobs," end quote. The Commission lauded the efforts of the British Labour Party, which issued its own reporting conditions in Ireland, the British Society of Friends, and the English Women's International League, along with a number of British newspapers, for what it said were the courageous stands they have taken in exposing and denouncing to the British people the murder done in their name. In spite of a campaign of murder, arson, terror, and destruction, the Imperial British would appear to have failed to preserve British rule in Ireland, it concluded. And a change in British policy from those efforts were indeed induced with developments in Ireland and pressure exerted in Britain itself, and among other quarters, with a truce being declared shortly after King George's conciliatory speech in Belfast in June 1921, while opening the Northern Ireland Parliament. However, among Irish Americans in the U.S., it was perhaps not surprising that fissures would emerge over the resulting Anglo-Irish Treaty that pitted Michael Collins head-to-head against Eamon de Valera. On December 19, 1921, in the Dáil's final days of debate, before the passage of the treaty by 7 votes, a few days soon after, and animated Collins as an architect of the agreement, as the principal architect of the agreement, told his colleagues, quote, "America did not recognize the Republic as matters in London were coming to a close. I received a cablegram from America. I understand," Collins said, "my name is apparently well known in America. What I'm going to say will make me pretty unpopular in America for the rest of my life. But I'm not going to say anything or hide anything for the sake of American popularity. I received a cablegram from San Francisco saying, 'Stand fast, we will send you $1 million a month.' Well, my reply to that," Collins said, "is send us $500,000 and send us 100 men fully equipped." I received, Collins said, another cablegram from the American Association for the Recognition of the Irish Republic. And they said to me, "Don't weaken, stand with de Valera. Well, let them come over and stand with both of us." The question for me is, are we going on with this fight without referring to the Irish people for the sake of propaganda in America? I was not going to take that responsibility, Collins argued. Yet there was indeed support from within America that Collins did seek and received for the treaty, to de Valera and his adherents' detriment. The 7-vote margin by which the treaty passed also was tied to the hand of John Devoy, the old Fenian and IRB man in America, who had locked horns with de Valera in the U.S. All members, as Dr. Laffin noted, who were in the IRB, who were members of Dáil Éireann, voted for Collins and the treaty, with Devoy's backing from across the waves having been crucial to that outcome. Thank you very much.